Today, the Shabbat before Passover is known as Shabbat HaGadol, or the Great Shabbat. I always believed that this Shabbat earned its title because of a spiritual significance before Yetziat Mitzrayim, before our exodus from Egypt. Perhaps this was the Shabbat when God decided to redeem us from bondage and enact the 10th plague that would in fact set us free. Perhaps this is the Shabbat when we as a Jewish people, we turned inside and we ask, what changed about our situation after hundreds of years of slavery that invited God to act, to inspire, to reach out? As it turns out, according to our tradition, Shabbat HaGadol has its name for none of those reasons. This Shabbat was always the one that was held aside for the community to come into the synagogue and ask the rabbis questions about Passover, what was kosher for Passover and what was not that year, and all kinds of questions about the Seder. Shabbat HaGadol the title doesn't reference a spiritual significance, it references a length of time. This was the longest Shabbat of the year, and we've done our best to uphold that tradition today. For me personally, the title of Shabbat HaGadol has always fit, because this week always prompts within me a significant question. You see, as I explained a couple of weeks ago when I talked about my grandfather, Simon Ba Lebovitz, this is the season in which I talk about 3 of my 4 grandparents. And just a couple of days ago, we commemorated the yahrzeit of my mother's father, Papa Nathan Zellman. He is the grandparent with which I am perhaps most connected because I was named for him. And yet, my Hebrew name, Natan, is from Papa Nathan. The N of Nolan is from Nathan. And yet, he's the only one of my grandparents who I did not meet here in this world. Each year, I reach this week and reflect and wonder, how can I connect with somebody who died years before I was born? That connection to people and events from our collective past, that exact question is what this holiday of Passover is all about. Passover is about connecting with a formative experience long ago. This great Shabbat, the Shabbat HaGadol, is all about preparation for that moment. There's a Jewish mandate for a transmission of knowledge and understanding. That's what the Seder is, a designed space and place and time to explain to our friends and family, to our children, and some of the core messages of what makes us Jewish. And if done correctly, the Seder can be so much more. It can also be a place and a space and a time where Judaism explains to us what makes us family. I've been so fortunate to have had 4 grandparents that I've admired throughout my life. And I've had 2 grandfathers whose characters I have tried my best to emulate. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about how my father's father, Simon Ba, how he constructed our institution of family. Now I'd like to speak about my Papa Nathan Zellman. Papa Nathan and Ba were 2 men who never met one another, and yet they're mixed inside of me physically. They each contribute to my DNA. Spiritually, together they form a moral compass that sets much of the direction of my life. Papa Nathan died when my mom was only 21 years old. His legacy he left behind was one of wisdom and strength, love and fun. In a single story about Papa Nathan, you can hear about him going to work outside on Maxwell Street in Chicago in the bitter cold to support his family, and then hear about him returning home from a long day of work to throw chickpeas up in the air and catch them in his mouth. Papa Nathan, at the same time, carried strength and silliness. Orphaned at an early age in Lodz, Poland, Papa Nathan's Shoah experience was one of fending for himself. He was forced to grow up quickly. He married young, and he had a daughter. He was told during the war that his wife and daughter were murdered by the Nazis. Then after the war, he received a second chance when he met my grandma Faye and married only a short time later under a talit, held by other young Jews who had survived the horrors of the camps, yet were still in hiding in post-war Poland in fear for their lives. Papa and Grandma Faye found their way into a displaced persons camp, a DP camp in Germany, where they had my Aunt Helene, and they set their sights on building a new life together in America. Then, only a short while before their boat was set to leave, Papa Nathan's daughter from before the war, Luba, showed up to the DP camp. She had finally found him. She survived and explained that she had witnessed the murder of her mother. And she also explained to her father and to now Grandma Faye that she had no interest in joining their journey to America. She, along with many teens like her, had their hearts set on building a new kind of Jewish homeland. Only days before his boat would leave with his family, Papa Nathan snuck out of the DP camp with Luba and helped smuggle her into northern Italy, where she could board her Exodus boat. He helped her find her way toward her dream of fighting for a Jewish state in a Jewish homeland. And his life pivoted from fending for himself to providing and nurturing and loving a family with all sorts of new kinds of dreams. Forget about the Magid section of the HaGadol that happened long ago. Papa Nathan was a slave in the 20th century who gained freedom and taught himself to read and write in a handful of languages and brought up all of his daughters in the United States and in Israel to pursue education and even higher education. He walked out of a modern Egypt without support, facing only the brutal wilderness in pursuit of a different kind of tomorrow. He left the ashes in Europe behind with my Grandma Faye and Aunt Helene on an experimental boat called the Sturgeon General, the only of its kind that entered this country through New Orleans, up the Mississippi River. As the Magid section of our family HaGadol goes, Papa Nathan and Grandma Faye disembarked with few possessions at all. And Hayas, a Jewish immigration organization, greeted them on the docks and handed them $15. $15 was all that they had. And what did Papa Nathan do? He immediately took $5 and sent it to his daughter Luba in Israel. They had no bread but the kind of affliction. And they still took a third of what they owned and sent it to family in Israel. If that single story hasn't set the moral compass inside my bones, I'm not sure what else has. But it's not enough to hear the story. It has to actually impact the way we live our lives. I have to live a life that takes care and protects my brothers and sisters in Israel. I have to live a life that demands that my family and my friends and my congregants realize how crucial it is to support Israel, and then learn about her and engage with her and advocate for her and dream with her and fight for her, even in the most complicated of moments in our relationship. So the story teaches us a value for our family. Just as the Torah explains, "V'haya ki yomru alechem b'nechem, ma ha'avodah hazot lachem." The Torah predicts to us that our children will one day ask us, why do you do the things that you do? And how should we answer them? The rabbis taught us that we answer them by telling them a story about what we went through, about who we are. We create for them a Seder. And we explain to them that these are the rituals that we practice. We teach and we practice. We teach and we practice. This past weekend, my family was in Las Vegas for the Taylor Swift concert. Believe me, my grandparents didn't know from Taylor Swift. For 4 days in Las Vegas, my son walked around wearing the Israel World Baseball Classic hat. That meant that for 4 days, he walked past thousands, tens of thousands of strangers, donning a blue hat with a giant white Magen David on the front with the Israeli flag embroidered on the side of the baseball hat. And he had no fear. And only 3 people made comments to him, all positive, encouraging him. He walked with a sense of Jewish pride and a love of Israel that would have made both of his great-grandfathers extraordinarily proud. With every step, he flexed a muscle that is atrophied within too many Jews today. The stories we tell should craft the values that we hold and the behavior that we live by. The HaGadol is supposed to affect our behavior as well. I know this because the storyteller of Papa Nathan's life in our family has always been his prize student, his daughter, my mom. And now she talks about him to my children. And she embodies his teachings. My mom always gives of herself to all of them. They all know that they can rely on Gaga for everything. Now you too can learn from Papa Nathan to support our family here in LA and in Israel. As I mentioned before, everyone here will be sitting at a Passover Seder. And in every Seder, I'll predict that there's going to be one person sitting at the Seder who will be suffering in some way, anxious about what lies ahead in their future. Even if it's only 1% of their tsuris, I want us to try to help them. The lesson of the Seder is that we are not all free until we have helped alleviate all of the afflictions of our family everywhere. Some of us are suffering right now, socially, financially, professionally, and we should all assume that God heard the cry, and God sent us to save our brothers and sisters. Can you learn from Papa Nathan's story? Can you spare your $5 to help somebody else in your family, in this community? This year, I'm bringing a new tradition here to VBS. Tomorrow, we're going to pack in this room 55 boxes of Passover goods. And then we're going to drive them and deliver them to 55 members of Cafe Europa, Shoah survivors who rely on Jewish family services all through the valley. Valley Beth Shalom from now on will assume the responsibility that any Holocaust survivor living in the San Fernando Valley will be taken care of beginning this Passover and until my last breath in my office. From my understanding, we still need a few more drivers to help participate in tomorrow's effort. We have 55 people. We have 50 people packing. I would love to get a lot more drivers. There's no more meaningful way to begin the holiday than when Blair and I hand our children a box and tell them to go walk up to the door, ring the doorbell, and wish the people inside Chag Sameach, Happy Passover, and tell them that we care about you. We cannot sit down as a community and play slavery, create a theater where we talk about slavery, until we have taken care of those who have suffered much worse in our lifetimes. We cannot just read the HaGadol with our eyes down on the words, unable to see the world around us. We have to see our family. We have to hear our family. We have to be attuned to what it is that they need. And then we have to ask ourselves, how can I help? If you want people to think of you as Papa Nathan, as Natan HaGadol on this Shabbat HaGadol, as the great giver, Natan HaGadol, consider how you can make the dreams of others come true. Think about how you can invest your $5 in the world around you. I invest my $5 in my children, in my family, in those who suffered in the Shoah. I invest my $5 in all of you. We work so hard on the second floor trying to make sure that this community is cared for every single day. And we hope more than anything that we inspire you to do the exact same. May the memory of Papa Nathan Zellman, Natan ben Shalom Veliba, be a blessing for all who loved him and for the entire Jewish world. And may he inspire us to care more and to give more and to do more for every generation of the Jewish people. And let us all say, Amen.